Mara from Welcome to 1979, and we're going to do a Q&A on live to vinyl recording, which is a misnomer, but we'll get into that. I'm super pumped because I've three of my favorite people here. We've got, in no particular order, Maggie Luthar, Anna Clark, and Morgan Jahnig from Old Crow Medicine Show. And Maggie and Anna, 79 crew. They are vinyl mastering engineers. So why don't you guys, I knew I did that, but why don't you guys introduce yourselves? Just a couple minutes of what you guys do, where you're from. Morgan first.
Okay, hi, I'm
If
Morgan
he's
Jahnig,
frozen, he might be frozen.
and
Oh,
I'm Morgan Jahnig from, like you said, I play bass with Old Crow Medicine Show. I also run our band studio here in Nashville, and very recently, just this last November, we did a live to vinyl session at Welcome to 1979 for the Recording Summit, and yeah, so I'm here to talk about that.
awesome. Anna?
Right. Hey, I'm Anna. I've been working at 1979 I think for about a year and a half, maybe a little over that, doing vinyl mastering. And I'm from Nashville. I've always lived here.
Cool. Maggie?
Maggie Luthar. I'm the head mastering engineer at 1979. I came to Nashville back in September, so I've been here a couple months now. I've been doing mastering for almost a decade now in various locations in Norway and in Chicago and now in Nashville. So yeah, winters are better here.
Yeah, it's nice right now, that's for sure.
Yeah. Tell me.
Yeah, and like I said, my name is Chris Marr. I own 79, and I'm a recording engineer in my own right. And we started doing vinyl mastering about 7 years ago. And the gentleman that restored our lathe, um, when he was down, kind of working on it, he said, "The first chance you get, record directly to this thing." And I was like, "Why?" He's like, "Because it sounds amazing." And he kind of gave me some reasons why. And it wasn't but like a week before he just brought in like an acoustic guitar vocal and just had to try it. Um, and I know we talked about this. This is called live to vinyl, and that's not really what we're doing. We're recording live to a lacquer, right, Maggie?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Not a vinyl record, but live to vinyl kind of, like a lot of words, makes more sense, even though it might not be exactly correct. Um, and the reason, like a little quick history lesson, and any questions anyone has, just jump in. But before tape machines, it was you recorded live onto the master lacquer, so that you record your entire record in real time, every song. Boom, 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 boom. Well, of course, artists are like, "Man, I screwed up the last song. I have to start over." So they developed a tape machine where you would record live to a tape machine, still mixed and everything live, but then you could re-record songs, compile the songs, and then cut a lacquer. And then we got into multi-track recording, and then it all went to hell. Um, so, and if you have questions about all these terms we're throwing around, just send us an email. We have a nice glossary of terms. It talks about a master lacquer, reference lacquer, stampers, all that kind of stuff, because it is confusing. So Maggie, what does direct to disc like mean to you?
Well, I mean, you described it pretty well. It definitely, you have to be very alert to what's happening around you and have very good communication between the people you're recording and what you're doing on the actual lathe. So the way that a lathe works when you're talking about cutting, just a very quick background, is basically audio usually goes into this device in two streams. One is it goes through a preview computer, which helps the lathe, space out the grooves so there aren't overcuts or anything like that. And then you actually have audio that's going into the cutter head, which is what cuts, quote unquote, cuts the lacquer. In a direct-to-disc situation, you can't use that preview stream because you obviously can't preview something that's not there already. So that, as you can see here. So in that sense, or in that instance, when you're doing direct-to-disc, you kind of have to be a little bit more generous with level adjustments, or like allowing more headroom, allowing more spacing between grooves. because you don't necessarily know what's coming next. Whereas before, the computer could kind of mitigate that for you. So it's a little bit more stressful on that end. You have to kind of predict things. And so it's, and if something goes wrong, you have to start all over. You can't like erase the tape and start over. So it's a little bit, it can end up being a little bit more of a process than just cutting a lacquer from a DAW or even just a tape.
Well, yeah, because I think for every one of us involved, we'll talk about this globally, it's everything that you do all at once. Like when you master a disc and cut a lacquer, normally you're by yourself, you play the music a few times, you get your scene together, and you can cut it, and it's not that big of a deal. And then when I'm, as an engineer, am recording, I'm recording, or when I'm mixing, and this is all together. And Morgan, usually you can play and fix a bass part or a banjo part, and this is, so everything is happening at once. And I don't know about you guys, but after how long was that record? 20 minutes, maybe 25? I was beat. Like, I was exhausted. And Anna, I mean, why do we have two mastering engineers on this? What are you doing during all of this?
Yeah, I'm just kind of helping out wherever I can. I feel like sometimes it can be really stressful, especially because you can't listen to everything a couple times. So you just have to be really quick. So it helps to have two people in there just watching stuff and making sure that everything's going the way it should be.
Mm-hmm.
And you handed me a lacquer, which was helpful.
Yeah.
I didn't have to go and do that. That was helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, trying to you have a lot of time in between sides to like look at everything and get everything ready. And this time you didn't want to leave people waiting for the band to play the next set. So you just kind of had to go a lot quicker.
Right, which is a good point. In this particular instance, as Morgan mentioned, this is part of our recording summit, and we have probably 80 people there watching this as a kickoff party, 70 or 80 people. So we do want to move, and it complicates things too. I know from my perspective, I'm a mediocre at best engineer, and I've got Grammy-winning engineers behind me watching and listening as I record. How many piece band, Morgan? How many piece band are you guys? I can't even remember. Nope, I lost your audio, Morgan.
Nope. Were we 7 or 8 that night? Oh, sorry, hang on. That's my fault.
I got you. Oh, hang on. He's muting, I'm unmuting. 2 engineers.
There we go.
There you
go. I think we were 7 or 8. And I'd forgotten that I muted myself. So we were at least 4 or 5 vocalists plus instrumentalists and drummers and people changing instruments on the fly. I could imagine that you probably lost a couple of pounds that night. Just moving across the board.
Yeah, and as a testament to how crazy these sessions are, I have very few pictures. There should have been a picture of, like, I had a chart hanging between the speakers of where everyone was, so I could hear an instrument and know where it was, because there was so many people switching instruments. And Anna was talking a little bit about her, who is a cousin with Kristen Karen.
It's mine.
Hey, cuz.
It's my cuz.
I'm glad it wasn't mine. I was like, who's, yeah. But so Anna's on the phone with my assistant engineer upstairs, Jeremy, and we've got these old school phones wired together so we can communicate that way. So, and so we talked about our roles then, and then Maggie, you're mastering as you do it. So Morgan, what does all this mean to you? How does this change from the artist's perspective then?
You mean versus the normal way we record?
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because we're such a live band. I think that a lot of what we kind of do right and a lot of what people really enjoy about our band is our live show. And so I think that when we approached it a little bit like a live show. So we made a set and we wanted that set to flow in a certain way and to potentially minimize the amount of instruments switching off or vocalist changes or position changes. And key changes as well. So, that aspect felt really comfortable to us. Now, obviously, the part that's definitely a big change was you get one chance at this. I think all of us, performing musicians when we're recording, like having that safety net of, oh, I can go punch, or we can do another take, or you can fly in the right note from a later part in the song where you played it the right way. And in this case, with so much going on, live, you have to be able to accept all your flaws and roll with them. And to do it in a recorded situation requires a lot of faith in each other and a lot of trust across the board. And so that was definitely, I mean, that's something that we're really used to, but that we've never done in a studio scenario before.
And that was interesting to me, talking with you about, because you've recorded with the who's who of producers and studios and approaches. And I was actually surprised you hadn't done something like this in the past.
The closest that we came was those first couple of records that we did with Dave Rawlings at RCA Studio B, and then later at Woodland. Dave was very much a live, he wanted to get full takes if he could get full takes, and any editing that was done or punching there was not really not any punching, but any editing that was done was done on the 2-inch. So you take sections of songs. So that was probably the closest that we had come before, but I mean, we've been doing this for over 20 years now, and other than Sun maybe, or something that would have been part of a state fair, there just weren't a lot of live to vinyl opportunities out there. So luckily we get to see more opportunities like that arise now. But through our history, through our entire career, it's just been, we've been doing all the different kind of ways that you can record, and that's why it was so cool to get to come to 79 and do a live to vinyl record, because we hadn't done it. It's been 20 years and we hadn't had the opportunity to do something like that. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And to your point, the reason we do these is it's exceedingly rare to be able to do a live to vinyl. So a lot of people don't know what it is because you just don't know what it is, right? Not every studio, most lathes are in mastering studios, which are not in the same building as a recording studio anymore, and we're lucky enough to have both of them in the same environment,
And not only that, when we were talking about it originally, and I know you, and I've worked in your studio before, and even I wasn't entirely clear on how the process would work. So yes. I was asking, so we're hitting tape first and then we're going, nope.
No, it's another term for it is direct to disc. So I think we're on the phone. I'm like, no, Morgan, it's direct to disc. You're like, fair enough.
As it says on the box. Yeah.
Well, this is a bit of a shoehorn, but I was lucky enough to do one of these with Pete Townsend and from The Who. And what we did was we did a standard tracking session with him for a few days with the band, with the musicians. And then at the end, he kind of realized we had this opportunity to record. And so what he decided to do is the next week he was doing a concert with Eddie Vedder in Chicago for Teen Cancer America. So he said, why don't we cut just one-offs of a song on a 12-inch reference lacquer and then auction them off at the concert. And then he had me and the band all sign affidavits saying this was the only version of this song, and this was the only version of this song. So we signed like 5 of them. So he called me. He goes, well, I want to auction these, but how do people know what's on them before they bid? I said, well, play it from a turntable on stage. And he's like, brilliant. So he did, and it's on video. So I'm gonna play this real quick. I'm gonna pop off the screen here.
I decided to go to Nashville to book a studio and do some recordings. And when I made the booking, I heard that they had a lathe thing to cut records. Thank you. And so I made a recording, and there's only one. Well, there are three of one performance. And I did a version of I'm One, and with the musicians that I work with there, and we're gonna auction this shit. And if you buy this, nobody else needs to ever hear it but you. Or you can buy it and you can put it straight up on eBay and I don't give a shit. Or if you can negotiate with the people that own the music, like me, you can release it. And it's one performance which I like, which is take one, and then there's another one here, which I'm going to play a piece of, because I don't want to play the one which was sold here, but this one is very much like the one. I'm just going to play you a bit so you know what you're buying. This is a vinyl record. From this, they would press records.
Every year is the same, I feel it again. I'm a loser, no chance to win. Leaves start falling, come down this collar. Loneliness starts sinking in. But I'm one, I am one. I can see this is me. I will be your lost, see I'm the one. Where do you get those blue jeans faded?
So that's Nashville. We did it in one take. But I did another version. You just heard the outtake. So the one that I really liked, which is the best one, we haven't played. Nobody has played it. It's kind of creepy. We're in the studio, you know, we've got the tape machines going around. When it comes to playback, a guy from downstairs comes up with a disc and he puts it on a record player and it goes and we listen to our playback on a record player. Kind of weird, but that's the way it used to be in the good old days. And there it is. It's just one. It's just one. I put in.
Sorry, this takes me a minute. You guys got me?
Yeah.
So that was kind of fun, you know, seeing that, and I had no idea it was on YouTube. And a little funny story is Yoli, my wife and business partner, I'm the one that spends money, and she's the one that says, "Well, we shouldn't do that." And I had just had the idea of getting those reference lacquer jackets printed, and it was a bit of a, I don't know, conversation we had about it. And then we got them, and then Pete used them, and then he's on stage holding it up, and I'm like, "See, this makes sense." So anyway, but it was fun working with him on that, obviously, because he has been doing it so long since then, you know. So I learned a lot about the process from him while doing it, you know. Um, and I don't know if we've really talked about the immediacy of it. You know what I mean? Because like Pete kind of alluded to it. Like, so just to be clear with everyone who's watching, I mean, Morgan, when you guys are playing, those microphones are plugged into the recording console. That's being mixed, sent down to Maggie and Anna with a mastering rig set up with compressors and EQs and all that, and being cut directly to disc in real time. So I like to explain to people when, by the time, Morgan, your finger's on the other side of the string, it's on a groove on a on a vinyl record. So that's, just imagine that, you know. And I think that's where the gentleman, Chris Muth, who restored a label, was telling me the fidelity is so high because it's air to a microphone to electricity to a groove, just like that. So it's fun to bring it back around now that there are more precise ways to record as far as performances are concerned, but this is the most precise way to record as far as fidelity is concerned, right? So let's talk a little bit about like the pre-production standpoint of this, Morgan, because because when you're recording live to vinyl, you know the format you're going to record on, right? And then maybe you can chime in too, things that we are concerned about. So I'm going to back up a step, Morgan. So I talk to Maggie and Ann and say, based on this artist's music, how long should each side be? What should I tell the band? Right, Maggie? So we have a conversation, Maggie, you and I and Anna, about what to talk to the band about, you know? So what did, you know, with this kind of stuff, Maggie, what were we talking about as far as length of a side?
Well, one of the things that I said before was not having that preview function. So I have to use the space between the grooves on a lacquer or on a vinyl record, but in this case, a lacquer is called land. And so that being able to preview makes the space, it's a more efficient use of the land in between the grooves. But since I don't have that option, I have to kind of space the grooves out further apart than what I would maybe do normally, just to be sure that, you know, if some crazy stereo information happens, that we don't have overcuts or anything like that. So the grooves are a little wider and they're a little bit more further apart. So that takes up space, which is time. So, you know, a 12-inch 33 RPM record, if you're just cutting it normally, you know, between 16 to 22 minutes of music is ideal, max, 22 minutes max. But I wouldn't want to do that for something like this where I don't know, you know, the dynamic range of the music. I don't know about the groove spacing is not as precise, all that sort of stuff. So I think we tried to keep it to 15-ish, something like that per side, which is like perfect for something where, you know, you don't know about the groove spacing and all that sort of stuff in a more precise way. So we had plenty of room on that disc for me to work with the audio and make sure everything was okay. So you have to be a little bit more conservative with side length when you don't have that preview function, or if you just even don't, if you don't know what's coming next, basically. So,
right.
Yeah. So that was, I think that was my main concern was that, and also dynamic range and headroom, just to make sure that I have enough room to play with that, so I don't end up causing a lot of distortion or anything like that, playback distortion.
Right, which is another point we'll make again later because it's worth it. Is the hardest things to cut and play back on a vinyl record are, I don't know, harmony vocals, harmonica, banjo, you know, and it's like Morgan was taking notes about what to bring to the section when we were talking about that. So, so Morgan, I kind of gave you the 15 minutes aside thing, and then kind of gave you the basic building blocks of once the cutter head drops, we are recording the whole thing. Which then you had to interpret as far as who's playing what, when, switching between songs. You want to talk to me about that?
Yeah. You know, I'm really fortunate to be in the kind of band where everybody plays a couple of things. if not all of the things. And really, it's just kind of our rhythm section. Myself and Jerry Pentecost, who's playing drums with us, we're the only people who kind of stay where we are. Live, that changes a little bit when Jerry goes and plays. He might play marching snare or washboard or something like that. But generally, we're in the rhythm world, and everybody else will migrate around to playing fiddle or banjo or mandolin or guitar or keys or harmonica or accordion or melodica. And so we definitely had to, we went through a couple of iterations of ideas for the kinds of songs that we wanted to do for this project, because the other aspect of this is that this is such a unique project that we wanted to do something that, was unique as well. And so we had some out there ideas that I think Chris is really happy that we didn't do. And then what we landed on is that we had the incredible Molly Tuttle playing guitar and singing with us as well. And so we thought, let's just do a country record. And so we picked some of our favorite country songs and a couple of our favorite old time songs, because we are at heart an old time string band. But as we're looking at how to put songs next to each other or what songs to include, we didn't want to have everybody changing instruments or retuning for every song, because that wouldn't have made as nice of a record. And so we picked, we did Rocky Top, we did Paradise by John Prine, we did Delmore Brothers, Blue Railroad Train, and some others. And we tried to lean into the strengths of the people that we had playing on the session, because we had like we said before, 7 or 8 people who are all incredible musicians. We want to use all of them to their fullest every time we possibly can. And knowing that stuff that's really mid-range heavy, we are talking about dynamic range and talking about the tonality of instruments. We are, outside of going live to vinyl, we can be a very difficult band to mix, because there's so much percussion in the strings, and the dynamics of all of the instruments are really, really outside of the normal range of, guitar amps and, that kind of thing. So I can only imagine what's happening on the other side of the mics as we're doing this.
Well, yeah, because a couple of our emails, you said, hey, I think we're going to do this around one mic. And I went, oh, that's going to be easy. And my first reaction, I walked down to Maggie and said, this is going to be cool. We're going to do one mic. And then it kind of hit me. It's like, wow, that's going to be really hard, because if I blow it out and it gets a little distorted, that does not yield to this kind of music. To your point about guitar amps, if there's a little fuzz in there, or I'm kind of missing the mark on something if it's more Americana rock stuff, then that's cool. It can be interpreted as cool instead of poor engineering, right?
Yeah.
And then before I could have a pretty solid panic attack and reply to you, you had already changed your mind talking to the band. And it came to a big semicircle in the live room, and Jerry on drums in the small, like 70s drum room. And then I think we all just decided that everyone was going to have a microphone kind of up above their head, one in front of their face and one down in front of their stomach, because everyone was just playing different things. And then kind of talking it through with the band, I'm like, well, I'm going to leave all those microphones on, so we have that continuity. Like you said, we didn't want the sound to kind of change, and and another important thing we talked through a lot was, when you're playing live, somebody can just talk on a mic while an instrument's being changed or tuned, and there's that visual connection that the audience has, right, to kind of fill those gaps. And on a record, quite literally, you don't have that. It's just silence, and it's weird,
That's true. To speak to that in specific, when when we did it this time, taking those moments in between songs where sometimes you would have to change an instrument or somebody would have to move to a different position. And those things take real time in the real world. And that needle's cutting that lacquer. Nothing's stopping it. So you better hope that that banjo you picked up was in tune from when you played it last time. And we talked about that we played a lot on the street corners in our early days, and so we're all kind of hucksters and carnival barkers at heart, and so it's in our nature to just fill space with jabber on stage. And we had we kind of talked about the possibility of doing that on this record, in those between spaces, and ultimately we decided against it, and that it would just be this sort of shuffling silence. And looking back, I think, boy, we really could have filled those spaces with a lot more interesting things than and but that's not what happened, and there's no going back to re-edit it. So
True. True.
Did I answer your question? What was the question?
Yeah, no, it was great. It was great. So that kind of brings us up to the recording part, right? So Maggie and Anna, why don't you walk me through like preparing to record, like what, because between Maggie and Morgan and I, we already kind of figured out the mic choices. We want certain mics with certain pickup patterns, right, that are better for vinyl than not. But then you, Maggie and Anna, kind of chose your mastering chain, right?
Yeah.
Talk to me about that, and we'll kind of talk about how the actual flow of the session works.
I based that kind of on similar to what I would do if I was cutting, a digital file, in terms of I wanted an EQ in case I needed to make some adjustments on that, a compressor to help manage the dynamic range of the music, especially since I knew that there was a chance that this music could get very dynamic, very quiet and very loud in certain sections. And I just wanted the sound to have kind of a nice flow and a nice groove from song to song. So the EQ adjustments I made tended to be kind of what I would have done normally, based on kind of the weird intricacies of vinyl and making that medium work. So cutting high frequencies kind of above 20 kilohertz, and making sure there isn't too much low end, making sure the low end is managed and not super not a very wide stereo image for that, kind of easy to take care of. So it was all the EQ adjustments I did were minimal, and it was just mainly to make it so that it got onto the disc okay, which was kind of my whole point for this anyway. It was not necessarily to change the sound so much, but to just mitigate any issues that the disc would present itself just by being cut. And I felt that the things that I chose complemented the music pretty well. We had some Worms EQ, we had an Unfair Child, those sorts of things, which to me lended itself very much in the same sort of artistic vein as what was being done upstairs. So that was how I approached it. And I probably would do things similarly for something else also. So,
okay. Yeah, and I gotta say, I mean, I was concerned about the mix I was sending you was real dense in the mid range.
Yeah.
To Morgan, there's just a lot going on: mandolins, banjos, harmony vocals, and I didn't have. There was nowhere to go. I didn't.
Yeah.
It was just dense, and I know that's really hard to cut. And I listened to it, and I'm not saying this because we're friends. It sounds amazing, and I was blown away. So I was surprised to hear that your work was minimal.
Yeah, well, and it's like I was explaining, but that's that's the things that I guess it just takes, time, experience, whatever. But I kind of do notice having to do the same things with mixes that are going to a record. And one is that I find there's like this mid-range buildup that tends to happen on lacquer and vinyl in general. So I always, not always, but a lot of times I end up very minuscule amounts, I take that out just because it balances on the lacquer better. So that was something that I was like, oh, Chris is sending me the mixes, and then on top of it, it's going onto a vinyl record, so I have to be a little mindful of that. But I try not to do too much unless there tends to be a real problem, and then I probably just tell you anyway. So.
Well, that's the thing too, you know, and I guess we should back up a little bit. So, God, did we even do this with you guys? Because it got kind of crazy that day. But typically, we'll cut a chorus or something
I did.
on a
I
band.
did test. I was doing test cuts the whole time. I had a whole scrap lacquer that, like, anytime they switched songs, and sometimes I'd start the cutter head, and then there'd be a big discussion. So there'd be like 5 minutes of me just cutting people talking on the record, which I'm like, oh, okay, well, take it off, and then immediately, of course, everyone would start playing, which I was like, I should just let it go. But yeah, so I did bits and pieces throughout the course of the day, so then I could make, if I needed to make any other adjustments, I could do that before the actual thing got cut. So
yeah, and how it's set up in the studio is I've got my laptop kind of off by the side of the console, FaceTiming with Maggie's laptop, so we can see each other. And we got the phone, so then like Nick or Jeremy was on the phone with Anna, and then I'm like, hey, I've got my scene together here. I think this is a good mix. Start mastering, and you start mastering, so we're not fighting each other. And then you would start doing test cuts, which you would have a kind of a scrapper lacquer there, cut some grooves, and you'd switch and listen to that downstairs, and then make adjustments while the band is rehearsing.
Yeah.
So it's you know, kind of crazy, and people are showing up for the event, and you know,
wandering into the room and going, "What's going on here?" And I'm like,
yeah. And then people are asking me, "What are you using on the kick drum or whatever?" I'm like, "Kind of working." You know what I mean? Kinda. So a normal recording session, I mean, nowadays it's just Pro Tools, so the recording engineers typically just rolling Pro Tools and the band just plays when they want to play, right? Or on tape, there's a little bit of communication, like hang out, rolling, hit record, and like a half a second later you're recording, right? How does it works a little differently here, right? So I'm sure the people watching right now have a record or heard a record, right? And like we mentioned before, it's cut in real time. So that leading groove you hear, that 4 or 5 seconds, what happens is I hit the talkback button, I tell all the band to just be quiet. And then Anna tells Maggie, you know, okay, go. And then Maggie, what do you do?
I start the cutter head onto the lacquer, and then once I'm like sure everything's okay, I tell Anna to tell Chris that like they can start playing. And then, as the track ends, I'm also finding out from Anna via Jeremy, or whoever, I guess you were talking to Jeremy, that, oh, this is the end of the song. So that little spiral, that banding that you see that is on a record where like a track start and end everything is, that I had to be told where that was. And I mean, you can kind of, there's no weird crossfades between any of these songs, so I could kind of guess, but it was also just good to know like how much time till the next track started and that sort of thing too. So I had to have kind of the communication between Anna and Jeremy to be accurate, so I could put the time spiral where it needed to be. And then Chris could see the lacquer because I had my laptop set up on a music stand, so he could see kind of how much space we had. So if for some reason song went on too long, he'd be like, "We got to wrap this up." So that was helpful.
Yeah. So then, I tell the band to be quiet. My assistant tells Anna to tell Maggie to drop the cutter head. Maggie drops the cutter head. She's ready for music. She tells Anna to tell Jeremy to tell me to tell the band to play. I tell the band to play. They all look around and they play. So that 5 seconds, Morgan. I know it's right. It's right. Really, we must be passing notes in class, right? But Morgan, what's that 5 seconds feel like? I mean,
well, okay. So I remember this position. I can't remember if it was side 1 or side 2 of this process, but like I think that first side, we're all sort of, on tenterhooks, just like waiting for it to, to happen. And so we're all just sort of looking around, and I kind of hear you say something because we're we're a band that generally misbehaves and doesn't listen to instructions, and so everybody's talking, and I kind of hear you say something, and then it's like it's just quiet, and then I think you go on, but you come back on the talk back, and you're like, guys, go, and so and so at that moment, then we're just on, and we're just doing our the thing that we do best, which is play together. And then after that first side was done, like going into I think it was on the second side, like it was even more just sort of talking and talking and talking and feeling really comfortable about the whole process. So that when it came time to do this side two, we were already disregarding that 5 seconds. And, really, really likely, I have to go back and listen. I'm wondering if there's if you hear me going shh on the first half of that second side, in the first couple of seconds. But for a band like us, rolling with unpredictability is something that we just do really, really well, and have done a lot of in our career. And I think all musicians to some extent probably do, who's been around long enough to have enough things go wrong. But I can say that we didn't stop ever.
No.
We did 2 full sides, without having to restart. So I'm going to give us thumbs up on that.
Well,
that was not a given.
Yeah, and like we said, every song that you accomplish on the side is one behind you, but then a mounting pressure, right, from all of us. Because Maggie and Anna, you're watching the lathe even closer. Like, no one wants to be the one that screwed up on the last song, right?
Oh, we all screwed up on all the songs.
Well, and that's a good point too. Like, because a lot of this, you have to just kind of manage your expectations. Because my little speech, I don't think I got to do it that night because it was kind of crazy. It's like, look, we're all going to mess up. It's just how do you want to mess up? And I choose to mess up going for something. I'm going to grab a solo, and it might be the wrong person playing the solo, but I'm not going to miss it, So, where are we going with that? I forget. Doesn't matter. We've got maybe Morgan, but we got some questions. That's probably why I spaced out. So this one's a little long for the screen. Aaron Silverstein from Minneapolis wants to know, are there any specific qualities you look for in a band when offering this method of recording? He imagines it requires a certain attention span and to be able to execute this well. I think, explaining this process to a band, it's easier to frame it as like, this is a live show of 4 songs in a row twice. And everything you want to be played and heard on the record is done at the same time. And touring bands, it's easier for them to wrap their mind around it because they tour and they replicate their music live. Versus a band that is in a studio or a 3-piece band that adds keyboards and shakers and stuff. It's hard to explain that. You know what I mean? And interesting bands are fun too. Because you did one, Maggie, with a punk band.
Yeah.
And how short songs? How was that?
That was a trip. I think that the coolest part, or not the coolest part, but probably the part that was the most happy accident was, so at the end, there's the lockout groove, and there's silence there usually, right? Unless people will do lock grooves. So then as the record kind of keeps going around in that last lock, it could make an interesting sound or whatever. And so they're finishing the last song, and I hit the spiral to lock out the groove, and I think it was a guitarist pulled the cable out of his guitar, and so there was like a sound, but that got right in the locked groove. So when you listen to the record at the end, there's this little bit of noise, and it sounds like it was intentional, but it was just a really fun, happy accident. So yeah.
And
that was a whole different thing too, because the songs were so short, so you kind of had to. That was weird, figuring out when the spiral was for the track marker and stuff like that. But yeah, they're all different.
And that's a good point too. We don't hear the whole side. Morgan gave me, and you might have gotten this on the punk record you're telling, Maggie, just kind of a brief, a cliff notes of what's going to happen.
Yeah.
This song, Molly's singing lead. Cool. You know what I mean? But I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah,
Song
no,
structure, how long, when it ends,
Nope.
right?
Nope.
And I mean, and we've all heard songs we thought were ending and then didn't, and you don't want to hit that button and make that space on the record and it,
Yeah.
be a false ending, right? So, because they're
I
going
mean,
to press a lot of these,
and to that comment though, on the flip side of that, like the sound doesn't change with those visual track markers, right? Like it doesn't change. It's just where the spacing is. So in a way, even if it was off, it would be kind of something endearing too, because you'd be like, oh, we thought the song ended, but just kidding. Like it's almost it. You could find a way to in a live setting, I think, to even find some sort of cuteness about something like that too. So
that's a good point. It's like proves it's live,
yeah, it's
right?
like
Everything's live.
we thought it was over, but it's not. So
Cool.
yeah.
Oh, and Zachary popped in late. He wants to know what band Morgan is with. That would be Old Crow.
Yes,
Oh,
Old Crow Medicine Show. I play bass with Old Crow Medicine Show. Is my that's been my day job for 20 years.
Yeah, and we were talking before we went live, Morgan. You guys just released a new song. Not to plug it shamelessly, but in our email yesterday, I was like, dude, yeah. So, and that's for those of you who are under the current crisis. A couple weeks ago, we had a crisis in Nashville. We had a huge tornado come through, and I think everyone just grabbed chainsaws and went and helped in North Nashville and East Nashville. And you guys did a nice song called "Nashville Strong," right?
Nashville Rising.
And Nashville Rising, and then your video was a lot of that footage of people helping. Yep. So
that was an amazing thing. I mean, we all got really, really lucky. A lot of our band lives in East Nashville, which was hit really hard by the tornado. Catch, our lead singer and songwriter, yeah, he lives about 2 blocks from 5 Points, which was just devastated. He's 2 blocks from buildings that aren't there anymore. And
wow.
Corey, he went and he spent the entire next week, going around with a chainsaw through East Nashville and North Nashville. So many people gave their time and of their talents and of the sweat on their brows to help out everybody in this town. There were stories of crews getting hired to come in and do cleanup, and there was nothing left for them to do because all the volunteers had done the work. And that was something that we were so inspired by. And so Catch wrote this great song, Nashville Rising, and kind of right before the next crisis hit, we were able to get together and record parts of it. And then, we're lucky to be in the kind of time that we live in where everybody got a chance. If they weren't there that day, they could add something in the recording at their home. And so we got a lot of other people that we love to add their voices and their talents to that track. And you can find it on our website, crowmedicine.com, and every cent that we make from that record is going back into the community foundation and specifically to support the relief efforts for the tornado victims in Nashville. So go check that out, please.
Okay. Thanks, man. We've got a question here that's a little too big for the screen. Jacob wants to know, and I think we should all answer this. We talked a lot about the challenges of live to vinyl. What do you find are some of the most rewarding parts of recording live to vinyl? Anna, what do you cut lacquers, on a daily basis, and what do you find most rewarding about recording, being part of a live to vinyl recording?
Probably kind of what Maggie was saying about having some of those like happy accidents happen, and sometimes I think it gives the record more life to it. It's also really cool to be so close to where the band's recording and to be able to communicate directly with them. Sometimes I'll just get a song and I might not know how, like there might be parts in that song where I can hear where it would mess up when it's cut on vinyl. So being able to actually directly communicate with the other engineers in the band is always really helpful.
That's a cool point. Maggie, how about you?
I kind of miss. I used to do a lot more live recording for concerts and those sorts of things, and I still do it, but it's not nearly as frequent. And so this was kind of a nice way to have a similar experience because you're live in the moment. You have to be very aware of what you're doing, but you get to work with a live band and all of kind of the possibilities for error or great things. So it's I really enjoy it because it takes similar, like, my brain is being used in a similar way, and I enjoy that. It's also something that until I came to 1979 I had never done before, so it was kind of an interesting thing to learn all about this stuff, because it's very different. Like I was saying, it's similar because it's on the same machine, but it's different because it's different. So I kind of like the variety of it because cutting lacquers is fun and everything, but it's definitely a unique process that you don't get to do every day. So I would say that probably is what I found to be the most rewarding part of it, and being able.
Interesting. So, yeah. So then you and Anna are now recording engineers more than mastering engineers because you're part of the session, and normally you're well past the session. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's cool.
I mean,
Morgan, how about you?
Sense. I mean, I'm literally recording something.
Right.
I don't know. I would still probably say I'm a mastering engineer for this, but I'm actually recording something, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Morgan, what about you? What's the most rewarding part?
I already talked about how this is just not something that most people get an opportunity to do, and so that it's cool that it's already cool like that, and it's already cool because you're doing something that it's only that it's right there, and you get it the next day, and you take it home, and you can play it in its final form, which is usually not something that you get to do. But I think that probably the most rewarding thing about this project for us and for me is that so much of the music that we learned from and that we listened to growing up was on vinyl, or it was on shellac, on 78s. And so to be able to return to that form, because of all the history that form has with the history of our music, that was super cool to be able to create something that goes right back to the earliest form of recorded music. And that medium formed the basis for carrying forward folk music in our country in a way that wouldn't have been possible any other way. So that's to be able to return to that and then carry it forward is awesome.
Cool. Yeah, that's a good point. Just the historic aspect of it. I guess from my perspective, as a recording engineer, sessions for me anyway are really exciting when we're tracking and getting the sounds, and then the excitement turns into more focus when we're getting to overdubs, or more like having to focus, and then the adrenaline drops, and this is full adrenaline all the time. And then we get done, and in an hour we did a whole record, and there's no mix tweaks. There's no, I think we should do that shaker in the second verse. You know what I mean? There's none of that second guessing. It's done, and it's literally, we're already 1/3 of the way into manufacturing too. The lacquer goes up to electroplating, and in this case, we had records the next day. Which is kind of amazing, and I always like doing things that no one else can do. And after, like to Morgan's point, after you do it a long time, those things that you haven't done before, the list is pretty small. That are legal, I should say. Charles wants to know if we have video clips. We didn't. If you go to the 79's Facebook page, there's a whole album of photos from this night. And Pete Lyman made a comment earlier. There's a nice picture I was trying to find of Pete flicking the camera off. But I do have a sound clip. So you guys want to listen to this? We've been talking about it for 50 minutes. Let's listen. Let me take myself out and we'll listen to Blue Railroad.
Blue railroad train going down the railroad track makes me feel so doggone blue to listen to that old smokestack. Come back again, let me hear the whistle blow. You're taking the sun, you're leaving the rain, and I hate to see you go. Blue railroad train, leaving me far behind. Give me back the good old days and let me ramble down the line. Blue railroad train, leaving me here alone. You treat me good, you treat me bad, you're making me think of home. I got the blues, longing for company. There's many miles from where I am to the only one for me. It's a lonely hill, waiting for the manifest. I hope that engineer is kind enough to let me be his guest. I'm not as bad as you might think I am. A hobo here, a hobo there, I travel these states around. Blue railroad train, a good old pal to me. You take me where I want to go, and transportation free.
And that was my first Facebook Live fade. I faded up. It went another minute. And it might not have sounded good the first minute. I didn't have my own microphone muted. I think I slipped into a Pro Tools thing. I hit Option Mute, and it doesn't work in this program. So, what did you guys think? What were you thinking as you heard that back?
I was thinking about, it's funny, I think part of the idea of doing this live to vinyl anyway was that we always like to do something that kind of scares us a little bit. And another thing that always scares us, but that we always run face first into is playing songs that we might not be entirely familiar with. And, just not being super precious about them, but, just leaning into the excitement of doing something that we hadn't done before. So I'm listening to that song and I'm remembering, oh, that's not the arrangement we decided on. So, I think that's great. And it's funny to think back and remember. I remembered that moment where I think it was right into that last verse and it went a little earlier than we had planned on, but we all did it. We all followed and, we all trusted each other. So that's what I'm always thinking about.
Anna, what were you thinking about when you listened to that?
I was actually kind of thinking about like how it was cool that it sounded good back, like being played through my laptop, because I've only listened to it like on a turntable with nicer speakers, so the monitors, studio monitors. So I was like, oh, it sounds good coming off of a laptop too.
Yeah, exactly. Maggie, what were you thinking about?
Well, that was the end of the side, so I was thinking about what was going to happen when the song ended, and having to like finish up the side. But yeah, it was nice to. I hadn't listened to this record in a while, and I listened to it yesterday when I captured that track, and I was like, oh yeah, this sounds pretty good. I forgot about it, so it was nice.
Yeah,
it was nice to hear that again. So that was good. I liked it.
Yeah, and that was a playback from vinyl because I could hear the crackles up front. When I loaded it up this morning and listened, I was like, something wrong with my computer? Oh yeah, it's just a vinyl.
I didn't even think when I went to capture. I was like, I should have blown some nitrogen on it just because it was kind of dusty, and I was like, it's fine.
Proof it's vinyl,
Yeah.
I get such a digital world. I thought it was like a clocking error on my laptop, But oh no, wait, it's just yeah. When I heard it, I was going back to like, where are those instruments? What are those instruments? Because in there, I was like, is that a piano? Do I hear a piano? You know what I mean? Because everything is so dunk 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 dunk, and trying to mix that and not knowing where it is or what it is or who it is was really intense on my side.
That I wanted to ask this of everybody, because I have a certain number of records in my life that I was intensely involved with, as as everybody here does. Can you ever listen to those records as if you were not intensely involved in them? Like, to where can you just sit back and listen to anything that you've ever worked on and not think about all the things that we're thinking about when we're listening to this record right now?
No.
More production records I can get away from, but I didn't listen to this one until after Maggie did. I was just scared.
Scared?
I was
That's
scared.
Great.
Well, I have a lot of vinyl records in this genre that have like a little bit of distortion in there that I cannot stand, and I was scared that I didn't give Maggie the room to cut this right.
Yeah.
So, and then when she said it sounded great, I took my copy home and listened to it.
You waited for permission?
Yeah, because I it was like, this is, if anyone doubts me, just go ahead and find a 7 or 8 piece band with multiple banjos and singers and cut it live to vinyl, and you'll know what I'm talking about in 2 seconds. So, and Morgan, we didn't talk about this ahead of time. Fred wants to know, are these made available for distribution or sale yet? We haven't really talked about the plans for this record. And if you don't,
I mean, I'm happy to talk about it. We don't. The short answer is there isn't a final plan right now. We kind of had some ideas as things were ramping up out of the end of last year, and I can't remember if our Live from the Ryman record was out yet when we did this. But it's like everything else when one thing's coming and you're trying to line up everything so that everybody's excited about everything that you do and that you're not saturating stuff. But the thought in going into doing this project, the obvious outlet for something like this is a record store day. And so either an April or April, or there's an April and a November. Is that right?
Yep.
2 record store days a year. And so I think we're still kind of waiting to figure out what, which one of those we were going to do. And then, you know, all this is happening, and we're trying to find different ways to, you know, make people excited to stay at home and listen. And so, you know, we can't get records pressed right now, but you know, we're trying to find out any way that we can to get people to be able to listen to this, because we're excited about it and we're proud of it. So just stay tuned, I guess. Best I can say.
Yeah, you know, and kind of the backstory of how this came in was, you know, rarely do I want to make a record with a plan of it being released, right? But this was part of our 10th annual recording summit, 10th or 11th, I don't remember. But we do this big recording summit, and Morgan has, over the years, become an integral part of that. He's been a client of the studio. He's come to our tape camps. He's attended the summit, and then all of a sudden now he's got his own stamp on it, where now we get dressed up real nice for a couple panels that we didn't used to do, and has really become part of the identity of the recording summit. So having his band be the Friday night kickoff party where we record live to vinyl and then have that record for the attendees the next day was a real full circle moment. And I was like, I'm going to grab that right now and figure out, and they can figure out the release later. You know, I'm going to take, that's huge, right? So I'm going to take that. So we got one more tech question, and then we should wrap up unless other questions roll in, which we'll keep rolling into more questions.
Well, hang on. I do want to say, I want to say real quick for those watching, because we've talked about this a couple of times, but the recording summit. The recording summit is something happens once a year at Welcome to 1979. I'm just going to take this over from you, and he's gonna get on Welcome to 1979's mailing list if you're at all interested in you know, the profession of recording and talking about it and sharing a lot of ideas with a lot of people who are like-minded and are really interested in the art of recording. You should definitely make a trip down to Welcome to 1979 for one of the recording summits. It's a great time. Do it.
Thanks, Morgan. Yeah, it takes place right at the studio. There's 60 attendees and about 40 panelists. And as we just discussed, a panelist could have been in the band the night before and then, you know, on a panel the next day talking about their favorite compressor. So it's this really cool conversation that happens over 3 days. Thank you for that plug, Morgan. You made my point. You're an integral part of it. I wasn't even thinking about the summit right now. So Nick wants to know, do I approach my gain staging differently for a direct to vinyl than cutting the tape or Pro Tools? Yes and no. What I tend to do is, because I'm recording and mixing at the same time, so I'll set all my equipment to like tracking mode, recording mode, and then listen, and then go, okay. And then I make those more adjustments to what would I do if I was mixing. I would add another 3 dB compression. I would make sure I do this and do that. And so it's kind of both at once. But my evolution as a recording engineer, learning the live to vinyl situation is, I used to not do anything and let Maggie do it. And then I found then she had to do too much. So I was kind of fighting her mastering chain. So then I just approached it like mixing a regular project where I'm just going to mix and then she's going to master. And I'm not going to think about it. I'm going to throw a 2-mix compressor on there. I'm going to lay into it like I'm going to have fun and just disconnect. And I know I talked a lot about I was a little worried about this one because it's complicated, but that's how I get through these. So, but yeah. Any final words from you, fine people, before we sign off?
Listen to more records.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, go to our Facebook page, click through the photos. You'll see a lot of really cool photos. Chris DeRay, who's an awesome photographer out of LA, took them and really captured it well. You can almost feel like you're there. You'll see some more technical photos. And then join us on Thursday. We're doing another one of these on, I think, like more of the technical side of Welcome to 1979. So if you're an artist, there's one we did last week on like how to work with a producer. You can just go to our videos, or if you're more of an engineer and want to learn more about the tech stuff, Tune in Thursday at 3 p.m. Central. But thank you for your time, everyone. This was fun.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.